Good evening to all of those, to all of you who've come to Vihara Buddha Gotama today, this evening. Some from Penang, some from nearby. Anyone from KL? KL, yep. So blessings to everyone. Can you hear? Can you all hear? It's a bit soft. Not sure what else I can do. So by popular request, this is now a Q&A session. Been giving a few talks the last few days, so now a chance for you to ask questions if there's something you are not sure about, or want to ask me maybe about my life as a monk, my practice, or something more broader about Buddhism or some aspect of the Buddhist teachings. Feel free. If anyone has a question, now is the time. You have a chance to ask. As soon as I say that, everyone looks to somebody else. They look across. Probably everyone's thinking, I hope he doesn't look at me. You don't have to have a question, but if you do, I'm happy to try and help. Maybe I'll just say a few words first about me, in case some of you don't know who I am. I know the ones in the front row do, but for you who don't know me, haven't seen me before, my name is Kalyano, that's my monk's name, Bhikkhu. So they call me Bhikkhu Kalyano, or nowadays Ajahn Kalyano. Ajahn means teacher, it's from the Thai tradition. So I was born in London, UK, many years ago, a long time ago, and became interested in Buddhism by reading books and then asking myself questions about life. Very ordinary kind of standard questions that people will ask, like, what is the purpose of life? Why are we here? What's the purpose of it all? What kind of happiness can we achieve and aspire to as human beings? I had those kind of questions, so I was reading books about different religions. This is when I was 16. Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, and straight away I found Buddhist books answered my questions the best. The Buddha was easily the wisest teacher I could find in the written word, reading books. I read some of the Buddha's own words from suttas. I read some books written by monks about what the Buddha said or explaining what the Buddha said. And then I was very lucky, by total chance, without planning, one day when I was home from school, sick, because I had flu or something. So sometimes being sick can have a good outcome. I was at home and I turned the TV on unexpectedly. Don't usually watch TV in the middle of the day, and in those days there wasn't much on the TV in the middle of the day anyway. There happened to be a BBC documentary called The Mindful Way, which you can still see on YouTube if you want, all about Ajahn Chah and his monks and his teachings. And he lived in northeast Thailand, Ubon Ratchathani area. But the documentary was in English, and some of the monks spoke English. They were foreign monks, some were Thai, and there was translation, and Ajahn Chah spoke and there was translation. And it fascinated me because I had had one strong doubt in my mind. I read Buddhism to the point where I discarded other religions as couldn't match the wisdom of the Buddha, didn't explain things as well as the Buddha. So I was happy with the Buddha's teachings. But my doubt was that what the Buddha taught may be relevant and you can practice it 2,500 years ago in the time of the Buddha in northern India. But perhaps nowadays in modern society, and I lived in London, a big city, maybe it's not so relevant and maybe nobody practices what the Buddha taught anymore. They believe it as a good teaching, they like the philosophy, the wisdom, but maybe it's not actually practiced anywhere anymore. Because I was only a kid, I didn't have much knowledge of the world. So that was my doubt. But then this program came on the TV and there were monks living in the forest and clearly living in a way that was very similar to what I understood they were in the time of the Buddha. They didn't handle money, they had a bowl, they went out collecting food, came back, and they lived their life very simply, meditating, living in a forest, sweeping leaves, sewing robes, chanting, some study, but a lot of meditation, mindfulness meditation, sitting, walking, and just mindfully going about their business. And I found the BBC documentary was quite effective, did the job. It pervaded the idea of the monk's life and passed across some of Ajahn Chah's own teachings about letting go, bringing your mind to see the way things are, letting go of a lot of your confusion, stress, suffering. It seemed to make sense and bring the texts that I'd read, I'd read some suttas and some of the philosophy, it brought that alive. And I realized, there are still people living, practicing what the Buddha taught in this day and age. And not just Thai men, there were nuns there as well, women as well, but also Westerners. Because already Westerners had gone to live with Ajahn Chah. This was the mid-70s, so Ajahn Sumedho went there as early as 1967. And Wat Pananachat, where Bhante Dhamma and I first met almost 40 years ago, that had just begun around 1976, just before that documentary was made, if I'm correct. So I got great hope, a sense of hope, seeing Luang Por Chah and his monks practicing on this documentary of the BBC and reading the teachings. I had this thought, people can do this. It's not that alien. But for the next couple of years, for the next couple of years, I carried on reading, and I also joined a meditation class and learned how to meditate. And that started to give me my own insight and understanding of what the Buddha was teaching. Because when you meditate, you turn your attention inwards. You're no longer relying just on books and talks and external things. You're now looking at your own mind and training your mind. And it's not easy, but you learn many things. And often you learn very quickly. You see, my mind is all over the place. What must I do? I must practice more mindfulness, concentrate the mind on the breath, must let go of some of these thoughts, must accept things that are difficult to accept, and so on. You learn some lessons very quickly when you meditate. So I joined a Buddhist meditation class, and I found it very enjoyable. I found it enjoyable and difficult because I had lots of pain in my legs. I couldn't sit for more than a few minutes on the ground like this, even with cushions. It was just new to me. But I had the thought, well, if I keep practicing, perhaps my legs will get used to it, the muscles will stretch and get used to it, I'll be able to sit longer with less pain. And that became true. But in the beginning, I just had the hope. It was just a hope. I didn't know for sure. So I started meditating regularly, and I would meditate every day at home. Whether other people in that meditation class just did it during the class and then never afterwards, I don't know. But I would meditate every day, and I really wanted to pursue it, deepen it, sit for longer. I really wanted to train my mind because I found it helpful. So I carried on. And my teacher, meditation teacher, he wasn't an expert, but he was well-meaning and quite wise. He said, "You need a teacher. A real teacher." He admitted he didn't think he was a real teacher. He was just like a student who was passing on what he had learned. He said, "You need a real teacher." And another visiting teacher had come to give us a talk about meditation, and he had formerly been a monk in Thailand for about 6 months or a year or something like that. And he said, "Yeah, you can go to Thailand and become a monk, and there are teachers there." And he also said, "You should go to Thailand and try training in a monastery, find a teacher and practice there. You'll go further with your practice." So I made that plan. But I was a student, so I was doing a degree in history. So I carried on studying, but I carried on meditating. So my first goal was just to learn to be able to sit like this, like you are now, for an hour. That was my first ambition in Buddhism, to be able to sit still on the ground for 1 hour. And for a whole year I still hadn't achieved it. At the end of 1 year, my first year, I could sit for 45 minutes without moving. And that was very painful, but I could see things were improving very slowly. So I kept going. But my second year of meditation, I had the chance to travel to Thailand. And I went to, started off in Bangkok. I didn't know anyone, didn't know the Thai language, didn't know any teachers, monasteries, anything. I just knew Thailand was Buddhist country. So I was staying in a hotel in the center of Bangkok, surrounded by what we call sensuality, Kama Loka in Pali. Sights, sounds, taste, smell, touch, sense stimulation. Everyone was there to have fun, food, clothing, sex, travel, all the different things people go on holiday for, all in the center of the city. Nightclubs and bars, all kinds of things. That's where I was staying. So it was like, oh, this is the wrong place to be, but I didn't know any better at the time. But very strangely, one day I came out of this hotel in the tourist area, and on the lamppost outside the hotel there was a little sticker which said, "Meditation class is in English." And the address was Wat Pawan, which is a very famous old royal temple in Bangkok. And I didn't know where it was, but I had the address, and in those days no GPS, no mobile phone. I had to ask. I said, "Wat Pawan, where is it?" And you just start asking. And I walked there from my hotel. My hotel was Sukhumvit Road, in not a very good area. I walked all the way. It took, I don't know, an hour or two, across Bangkok. And I walked there and I joined the English language meditation class, and there was an Australian monk teaching, and he ran it every night. And the abbot of that monastery came by one day, a Thai monk, a very famous Thai monk called Somdet Yana Sangwon. Somdet means very high up. And he eventually became the Sangharaja, the highest monk in the whole of Thailand. At that time he wasn't yet Sangharaja. but he was very encouraging of foreigners to learn meditation. So he opened up a huge hall like this one, but with air conditioning and carpet. And if you walked across Bangkok in the hot sun and you get to somewhere which has a nice carpeted hall with air conditioning, oh, you're very happy. Already I thought, my meditation will go well here. So we practiced meditation in the nice air-conditioned room, big room. The number of people wasn't there very many, maybe 10 people, but the monk would teach us meditation, sitting meditation, and then he taught me meditation, how to walk, using the meditation word Buddho. You recite Buddho and you walk back and forward. And the room is cool, very peaceful, because this was in 6 o'clock in the evening, so all the monks had finished their studies for the day. They were all in their rooms, and the lay people came and learnt meditation, and we'd sit and then we'd walk back and forth, Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. And the first time he taught me walking meditation, I really found it agreed with me. I concentrated on the feet touching the ground, recited Buddho, and he told us to walk for half an hour. And there was a clock on the wall like here. He said after half an hour come back to where we were doing the sitting. But after 1 hour he had to come up and tap me on the shoulder because I was just walking back and forth reciting Buddho. I got so absorbed, so peaceful in my walking that I couldn't feel my body and I didn't notice the time. I was so happy walking. Samadhi arose. So the very first time I ever practiced walking meditation, I gained samadhi. That wasn't the same for sitting meditation. As I said, it took me about a year before I could sit for 45 minutes. Only then did I start feeling more peaceful, more concentrated. But walking meditation, I was peaceful the very first time. And I finished that first session at Wat Pawan temple, and I decided to walk back to the hotel, another 1 or 2 hour walk. And it was peaceful the whole way. Buses, dusty, noisy, food, people, didn't bother me. I just walked meditating on Buddha. And I was so happy, I thought, now I can practice walking meditation and sitting meditation. And about the second or third night I was there, another man came through and he had been staying with Ajahn Chah. He'd come back because Ajahn Chah was in Ubon, I was in Bangkok with this group meditating, and he told us about Ajahn Chah and his monastery, and he said you should go there because he can teach you, you can learn meditation because there's Western monks who speak English there. So I did. It took me another 10 days. I was practicing at Wat Pawan first, and I just practiced there for 10 days. Then went to Ubon and went to Wat Nanachat, where the foreign monks lived and practiced, and I became anagarika, wearing white, shaved my hair for about 3 months. This was in my long vacation as a student, and tasted the monk's life. It just took me a few days being an anagarika at Wat Nanachat for me to realize, oh, I can do this, I can become a monk. Because I had doubts whether I'd make it, whether I could live in the forest, eat 1 meal a day, keep the 8 precepts, all that kind of thing. But after a very short time, those doubts faded away, and so I decided I would become a monk with Ajahn Chah. But I had still had to finish my university degree. So I had to go back after 3 months. I went back to England, finished my degree, which took about another 6-8 months, and then booked a ticket to return to Thailand, this time for good, with the idea I'm going to become a monk and maybe never come out again, never go home. I wasn't sure about that, but I just thought I would commit to the monk's life indefinitely. So I did, and started training and spent half my time at Wat Nanachat or sometimes at branch monasteries, and then half my time I would go and spend it with Ajahn Chah. Even though he had stopped speaking and was very ill, I wanted to help look after him or nurse him. So the first few years as a monk I spent a lot of time with Ajahn Chah nursing him. So I was doing my own practice of meditation, learning the chanting, learning the suttas as well, and then caring for Ajahn Chah as well, meditating as well. And even though there were many challenges, it wasn't all easy, generally I was happy to do it. And I started to meet other monks, and Bhikkhu Hai, Bhante Dhammawuddho was one of them. He came from Malaysia. I think there were 2 or 3 of them came in a little group, stayed at Wat Nanachat, so I got to know him as well, all those years ago. So I stayed with Ajahn Chah, or near him, for about 6-7 years until he passed away. And then I went to live with Luang Por Anand, who lives in another part of Thailand, in Rayong, on the coast. Another monastery with durian trees, so I learnt to eat durian and get used to that. So I'm not afraid of durian, not like many of those Westerners, they don't like the smell. And then from there, one year, 1998, we were invited to Australia. They actually invited me first. They said, "Can you come to Melbourne and teach meditation?" I said, "No." I said, "I'm not a meditation teacher, I'm not a master, I'm a student. Ajahn Anand is my master. I wouldn't consider going unless he goes." And they said, "Okay, we'll invite him. Will you come as the translator? The attendant monk and the translator?" I said, "Okay." Because when you're the translator, you feel like, oh, you can go into the background then, you just speak, translate and then disappear. And that suited me because I didn't have any plans to be a teacher or spread the Dhamma or build monasteries. In those days, my plan was to become enlightened, and I didn't want to take on any other responsibilities at that time. But of course, having gone to Melbourne and other parts of Australia too, we got to know many Buddhists, and already they started inviting us to start a monastery in Australia. And I said, "No." Ajahn Anand said, "We'll see." And we went back to Thailand, and we had no plans to do anything, but many of the Buddhists from Australia followed us back to Thailand. And eventually they made an offer. They said, "We're going to buy land." And eventually land was purchased and offered to become a monastery, and then I was sent to see what it was like. And I didn't know what it would be like, but I already knew how to meditate, so I thought, well, if I can meditate in Australia, things should be all right. And I could, and I still can. So that's the kind of guideline, if you can still meditate wherever you're living, that place should be okay. If your meditation is no good or it's too difficult to meditate, there's something wrong. But I didn't encounter that. I found Australia very peaceful, the people kind, supportive, generous. Some of them knew something about Buddhism, some of them didn't. Some were completely new, green, we say. But that would change, wouldn't it? I thought, if I live here, they'll probably learn what they need to learn and support monks. And we were getting enough food from day one. People would give us food. We didn't starve. So my monastery near Melbourne has been there 24 years now. We've never had to cook food in the monastery. Sometimes people do cook food. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying it's never been needed, because every day since we arrived till now, people have been willing to bring food from the city, mainly from the city, but not always. Sometimes local people, sometimes people from outer suburbs, sometimes from inner suburbs, sometimes from the other side of Melbourne. Some people will drive 3 hours to offer food. Amazing. But we've never had to cook food. So the style of the monastery is a forest monastery. Every day the monks go out with their bowls, we receive food offerings, and there's a kitchen. People do bring and prepare the food there, but they've cooked it at home and they prepare it, and we receive it. So the monastery has always been very self-sufficient that way. We haven't had to worry about food. You don't always know how many people will come or how much food, but there's always been something. So that's a blessing, that's a good start. And then the forest is peaceful. You can sit and meditate. The biggest distraction is a bird called the cockatoo. Anyone know what a cockatoo is? There's many varieties of cockatoo, but the cockatoo that we have in the largest number is a white cockatoo with a headdress on and very noisy. Makes a screeching sound. But you won't get one cockatoo, you'll get 50 arrive at the same time. So you're just meditating and then you're... And the kookaburra makes a lot of noise as well. If you heard them, they laugh. You get a couple of them next to you again. You're just meditating and you've got to deal with that. But it's good training to let go. The other one that's quite noisy is called the lyrebird. The lyrebird is like a pheasant. It's got a long tail and it struts around the floor of the forest, but it also imitates all the other birds. So you get all the birds in one. Kookaburra, cockatoo, magpie, every bird in the forest he will copy. And he does it, I think he does it to attract his mates, so it's a kind of, showing off, I can do all these bird sounds. They can actually do other sounds. They can imitate a car or a chainsaw or someone cutting wood or something. They do all these sounds, and they often like to come and do it right next to the monk's kuti. This afternoon we walked up on the hill, there's kutis. Very nice atmosphere, peaceful. I don't think there's any lyrebirds here, but in my monastery, you have a nice kuti in the forest like that, but then the lyrebird comes along and he sits right next to your kuti, and he has a little mound he makes, and then they dance, and they do their noise for half an hour or something. It's like, because you're meditating and it's like quite annoying. So you have to learn to let go. There's always something, isn't there? Wherever you are in the world, we have birds that are noisy. We also have a lot of other animals, wombats and kangaroos and things. But generally the forest is peaceful. The lay community are supportive, helpful. We have enough food, support, so it's a good place to practice. So I've been there now for 24 years. And as you know, on this trip, visiting Penang, we're on our way to KL, but it seemed like a good halfway point to stop here for the night and give you some teaching. Well, that's a little bit about me, who I am. Now I'll give you the chance, if you have any questions about meditation or life as a monk or anything, you're welcome. You can try asking. Yeah?
Also, get a little bit about right speech. Because we talk a lot during the day, and a lot of our wrong speech comes up. So we talk a little bit about fall back of wrong speech and how to...
Right. Well, you're right, I think. Human beings, we're a social creature. We live in families, or sometimes even when we're single, we live with other people, we work with other people, we interact, Buddhist groups, interacting. So speech is a big part of our life, what we say and what other people say to us. And it's so important, the Buddha made it one factor in the Noble Eightfold Path, cultivation of right speech. Right action, right livelihood, right speech. These are fall under the area we call sila, morality. And the simple guideline for right speech is, your speech, your aim is to not say things that harm you or other people. Any speech that is harmful is wrong speech. So sometimes we have it described what is wrong speech, what is right speech, according to the suttas. But you can use this simple reflection. What are the results of my speech, my words? Or what are the results of someone else's words? If they're harmful, there's something wrong there. They're going to create stress, suffering for the one speaking, for the one listening, and they may be increasing mental defilements. Why can I say that? Because if you're speaking without mindfulness and without wisdom, and you're speaking in an unskillful way, what we call wrong speech, you'll be increasing either your greed or your anger or your confusion and delusion, or quite possibly all three together. So you're increasing defilement, which is the opposite of what this Noble Eightfold Path is doing. Noble Eightfold Path is to help you remove greed, anger and delusion from your mind. So right speech has to fit in with that. So all these 8 factors of the path, we call the path like a wheel. We have a wheel here. I know this has many spokes, because you can also describe the path in like the 12 stages of dependent origination. They also make up a wheel. But the simplest version is the Noble Eightfold Path. 8 factors, 8 spokes of a wheel. And right speech is one of them. But it relies on the others, because a wheel with 8 spokes will only work properly if all 8 spokes are there. You remove a spoke and the wheel starts to go wonky. Doesn't run nicely. So each factor of the path is needed, right speech included. But each factor will support the others. So where does right speech come from? Well, it comes from right view, samma ditthi, right understanding or right thought, samma sankappa. So if somebody is angry, already they're thinking anger. If they're angry, their thoughts will be negative, critical, fault-finding, whatever, because they're angry. Quite likely their speech and even their actions will reflect that. So if you're angry in your mind and you're thinking angry thoughts, what we call micca sankappa, or wrong thought, then it's going to come out as micca vaca, wrong speech, or micca kammanta, wrong action, or even wrong livelihood. Like if you're caught with a lot of negativity, maybe your livelihood is you kill a lot of animals for your livelihood. These are just examples. So all these factors are linked. If you have a right view, then everything else starts to become right. So what is right view? Well, particularly the understanding of the law of karma. Skillful action rooted in skillful intention leads to good outcome. Unskillful action coming from unskillful intention leads to suffering, bad outcome. Understanding karma is kind of central to right view. Understanding that there is such a thing as good karma, bad karma. And then as you develop that understanding, you move into the Four Noble Truths. Understanding the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, its origin, there is the end of suffering, and there's a path that leads to the end of suffering, which brings you back to the 8 factors, doesn't it? 8 factors of the path, and one of them is right speech, samma vaca. So right view, the Buddha said, is like a lamp. So it's dark out there. If you walk out there after this talk, you need a torch or a lamp to go and walk anywhere, because it's dark. But once you're holding a lamp, a lantern, you can walk, because you can see what's in front of you, as long as you're holding your lantern. If you put your lantern down, suddenly it's dark. Uh-oh, bump into things. First thing you'll bump into is a dog called Mudita. He's lying out there and you'll probably go, rah, 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 because you bump in. Maybe we'll see what happens when she leaves. I don't know. Maybe the dog won't bark. But you'll bump into things, won't you? If you have no light, you bump into things in the dark. That's like someone with no right view. There's no light on in the mind. So you make wrong decisions, you bump into things, you cause yourself suffering. But if you have right view, you have that wisdom, then your decisions, what you say, what you do starts to become right, meaning conducive to the end of suffering. Not making more suffering, ending suffering. So where does right speech come from? It comes from right view. With right view, your thinking starts to fall into line. You understand what is wrong thought and right thought. Wrong thought, thought rooted in ill will, hatred, greed, desire. Right thought rooted in nekama, letting go, abandoning sensual desire and attachment, abandoning ill will, abandoning hatred. Right thought is like that. So right thought leads on to right speech. You're forming the right kind of words in your mind from right view and right speech. Now your pre-speech, meaning your thoughts, are right, because you've got the light of right view. So when you speak, you've now got limits on what you say. You say things that are not coming from greed, anger and delusion. You say things coming from non-greed, non-anger, non-hatred, non-delusion. And the same for actions, the same for everything you do. You need right view to shed its light on everything that you're thinking, saying, doing. So none of these factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are separate or, independent of each other. They're linked. We need all of them, not just one. And that's one of the first insights I got from Ajahn Chah, or first understanding. He talked about Noble Eightfold Path is like a circle or a wheel, and each part is essential and they're all supporting the whole. So right speech, kind speech, honest speech, speech that's useful, helpful for the path, helpful for the practice. We can describe it like that, but you also have to see it's linked to the other parts of the practice as well. So that's why you come to a monastery, we try to avoid wrong speech, because we know it's only hurting me if I tell you lies, or I speak in anger, or sow seeds of confusion. I'm not helping you and I'm not helping myself. I'm making bad karma and you're all going to end up not peaceful. So a monastery is a place you come to learn and practice right speech. And you feel it, don't you? When you're in a monastery, if you're angry, maybe something goes wrong in your day, you have some pain, or the fire ant bites you. Maybe you're tempted to swear or shout or curse, or if the dog barks, you want to curse the dog, or your friend drops something on your toe, you want to curse your friend, but you're in a monastery, so you stop yourself. You have mindfulness, so the other factors of the path come in on mindfulness, awareness. I'm angry, I'm upset, I want to say something, but I can't. It's in the monastery, I'm not going to say. So you keep your right speech pure, you practice it, even when you're angry inside maybe. Or you have greed, maybe you're in a monastery, here, very peaceful place, but then you start thinking, but in the monastery there's no dinner. What can I do? No food in the evening, I'm staying here. So, in your bag you've sneaked in some extra cookies. And when no one's looking, you're planning it, you're thinking about it, maybe you go and say something about it or do something about it. I don't know, I'm giving an example. If you were to do that, if you were to eat in the evening in a monastery, you're out of place. It doesn't fit. If you were to swear, it doesn't fit. If you were to scold someone really rudely, nastily, it doesn't fit. If you were to steal, it doesn't fit. But any words that we call wrong speech don't fit in a monastery, do they? So you come to the monastery, you learn right speech very quickly. Everybody learns it with polite, friendly. Sure, we occasionally forget ourselves. It happens. We accept that. But our aim is to constantly improve. Filter out the wrong speech and bring in the right speech. Then when you go home, you've got a taste of right speech. And the problem is at home, other people don't understand what right speech is, maybe. So you go home or go to work, there's all these people swearing and cursing and telling lies and exaggerating things. It's quite hard work, isn't it? It's practicing right speech out in the world. You're probably in a minority in the world, aren't you? The majority of people don't practice right speech. You have to work hard. You have to be disciplined, restrained, careful, mindful, determined. And it's more easy to fall into wrong speech out in the world. So that's one of the benefits of monasteries. You learn right speech, right action, kindness, compassion, right view. You hear the Dhamma, you gain right view, right thought. You have a chance to practice mindfulness and right effort, mindfulness, and develop some samadhi. So monastery is the best place for all these, developing these factors of the path. So there's something on right speech. Any other questions?
On meditation, it's wondering whether Dhamma Samadhi is likely to be fourth jhana, and is that necessary for meditation?
Yeah, it's explained as the four jhanas. But if you look at the explanation, it also goes into the factors of each jhana, what those factors are, which is sometimes more helpful. You just say fourth jhana, what does that mean? But you go into what are the factors. So the fourth jhana, the primary quality is equanimity based on purity of sati. First jhana requires vitakka, initial applying your mind to the object, so putting your attention on the object. Vichara, sustaining the attention on the object, keeping it there or keeping it in mind. Piti arises. As you do that, your mind, body and mind relax. Joy arises. Mind becomes more supple. Sukha, the mind becomes more still, less diffuse, less distracted. Eventually, ekakata, the fifth factor, is one-pointedness. So all samadhi has one-pointedness. But these other factors, gradually as you develop further, maybe you can become so skilled, you can go straight to your meditation object and you don't need to spend a lot of time on initial and sustained application. You can just go straight to your object and piti arises, maybe. Nevertheless, the explanation is so you understand this is a process of refining awareness, refining skills in putting attention on an object, and an ever more refined object. But one thing to remember about Samma Samadhi is Samma Samadhi needs to be practiced with all the other 7 factors. It's not independent. Just like right speech, right samadhi also needs the other 7 factors. So one thing the Buddha said, Samma Samadhi is purified by sila. We need right speech, right action. So if someone is talking a lot of very negative stuff, they're gossiping too much, or they're scolding their friends too much, cursing their friends, they're unlikely to get jhana or Samma Samadhi. If somebody has wrong view, they may still be able to develop samadhi, but it would be miccha samadhi, because if you have miccha ditthi, then you're going to go on to miccha samadhi. That's interesting. Because some people do develop skill in concentrating the mind, but they haven't developed other factors of the path. Maybe their precepts are not very well developed, or their wrong view is there. So that often comes with people who still have a strong sense of self and a misunderstanding of what is wholesome and unwholesome karma and what is the purpose of the Buddhist path. So sometimes actually practicing samadhi, you might say in a modern way, you might say to boost their ego. I want to be better than the next guy. I want to make money. By being better than the next guy, I might be able to advertise myself as this master of the mind. And I can teach people, and they may be successful at that on one level, but they're doing it with a strong sense of self, maybe some greed, want to become famous or make money, or even anger. Even anger can back miccha samadhi. Because if you have a strong ego, sense of self, maybe you have a sort of competitiveness or a conceit, arrogance. You compete with other people. So if someone else seems a bit better than you, maybe you don't like that. I've got to meditate better, I've got to make my mind more powerful than them, because you're now competing and you maybe have some anger even. Or you're using samadhi in a way maybe to hurt someone. Black magic, superstitious sort of practices, or just a skill like shooting a gun, using samadhi techniques to develop that. So you can say, oh, I'm so calm and still, I can aim this gun and shoot somebody. My samadhi is so good I can do that, but there's no samadhi, it's miccha samadhi, you're thinking about killing. There's all these different examples, but miccha ditthi will lead to miccha samadhi and miccha sati and miccha everything, miccha vaja. That's why samma ditthi, right view, is so essential. We need to hear the Dhamma, we need to associate with Kalyana Mitta, we need to reflect on the Dhamma so that we get our views in line with right view, correct view. And then the other factors of the path will develop correctly as well. They'll support that, including samma samadhi. And this may seem kind of abstract, but I've met people who have trained in samadhi, but they're not, you can tell they still don't have right view. And they got the wrong idea why they're practicing samadhi and got the wrong goal in mind. It does happen. So your number one is to hear the good Dhamma from noble ones and good teachers, reflect on it, establish your right view, so then all the other factors of the path will develop correctly. And you have to keep doing that as well. It's not you hear one Dhamma talk and that's the end of it, you've established right view. Most people have to keep topping up your Dhamma teaching regularly to make sure that you're still practicing right view. But sometimes we get lost by our own desires and we kind of stray from the path a bit and we start thinking in a more greedy way, or a common one might be we're angry with someone and so we're holding on to anger, maybe even seeking revenge. So I knew one monk who was jealous of another monk because this other monk was considered to be a noble one, always being praised, lots of lay supporters, very well known, always known for his good samadhi, even having psychic powers. This other guy also meditated, but he wasn't as good as the first one. He's jealous of him. And he said, I've got to get him. And he had this sort of revenge attitude. I'm going to get him, I've got to bring him down, I hate him. This is what his friends said later, and this is what we know because he started sort of trying to use his samadhi to control the first monk, the good monk, the pure monk. And this eventually was all exposed. So even monks can get deluded like that and get lost in wrong samadhi. Or the other one, as I said, black magic, that kind of thing, where you're trying to control someone through the mind in some not very wholesome way. This is all miccha samadhi. Question at the back, yeah?
在讲天咯，我讲福建啊，我唔係講國嘛。
You're talking Hokkien. I can't talk Hokkien.
Maybe we can try.
Oh, your friends will translate, they'll help.
我都真係天災咯，我都真係天災。然後國家公司是嘛，有合理辦法，這個天災減少。
She's trying to say nowadays many disasters. How in Buddhism that we can help to prevent or to reduce this kind of disaster?
Natural disaster.
Actually, the first point I would say is, I don't think there's any more disasters nowadays than before. It's just the news is very fast and we all have the news, so we hear about it quickly. But I think there's always been earthquakes, flooding, fires, problems. They've always been there. Yep, we'll do it section by section, the answer.
Actually, DC 本身有天灾的，是讲当天咱先进了，咱会收到伊的新闻，甲见到就看到真是天灾。其实都有天灾，我们不知道以前现在因为这个科技发达，新闻通讯很快嘛，所以我们就有收到很多不同国家的那个天灾。
Having said that, it's a very common response for Buddhists when we hear this news. There's an earthquake, there's flooding, this problem, that problem. We feel compassion. We feel sorry for the people suffering. Some die, some injured, some lose their home. We feel compassion. Sometimes there is something we can do, maybe charity work. Some small way or bigger way we can help with charity. Give some donation, send some food, send something. Sometimes we can do that. Sometimes it's too far away, too many people, too far away, nothing we can physically do. But we can meditate and send our thoughts. We always say send our thoughts and prayers, but in Buddhism we send our meditation. We meditate on the thought of compassion. May they be free from suffering. May they be healthy, may they recover, may they get a home if they lost their home. We send our thoughts of compassion through meditation. So first one was charity, if you can. Second one is meditation.
咱就着讲
慈悲。
让他有爱去做 donation 在里面，把自己上在比较好，咱会做到。但是咱就要讲慈善了后，咱发慈悲，慈悲心，就讲希望这样的好，希望这样的情况，都一年都分享一下，都让有 meditation 来的方式来传达。如果你在当时在做，然后去慈善的一种一些的Sorry, I'm on track.
Another one, the Buddha said we practice Brahma Vihara, so metta, kindness. Second, karuna, compassion, the wish to help, freedom from suffering. 3, sympathetic joy. Maybe they get free from their suffering, they rebuild their home, they get out of the problem, they recover. Mudita. 4th, upekkha, maybe there's nothing we can do. They're suffering over there. We know about it, but there's nothing we can do. We have to be equanimous, upekkha, until something changes when we may be able to help. But for the moment, we have to wait, be patient. There's nothing we can do. So we practice upekkha, think about karma. Everybody is receiving the fruits of their karma, and sometimes nothing you can do. So 4 Brahma Viharas. Anyone know the 4 Brahma Vihara?
Season B, 4 Brahma Vihara.
有时候呢，这方法就是用你的爱心慈悲心、舍心还有给他就是平常心你讲有些东西的话，有时候你是想帮人家的话，你自己是没有能力去帮人家的时候，可是你在想他的话，你没有能力的话，你就要怎么给个平衡的心哦？等到你有能力帮人家的时候，你才去帮哦。好吗？慈悲施舍，慈悲施舍的修禅的方法的话，也是修疗的话，也是可以找一点他们的，好吗？懂吗？
You ask more? Any more?
我去了清迈到现在，回来到现在，然后我看到如意，我的心是不能。因为我在清迈受气的时候。
这个谁在学了对去清迈，然后是跟from Chiang Mai, she see all these disasters and other things, she's kind of emotionally upset. All these disasters.
I think many people, yeah.
Over emotionally.
Yeah. Many people, same. I saw the video, the Bangkok building collapse, people running, screaming. I also feel, hair stand on end, tears, feel so sad. See Myanmar, see building falling over, people dying. I met one Burmese lady, her family are injured. She talked to me in Bangkok. She's lost family members because they work in Bangkok, but many of the family back in Myanmar, in Mandalay. So I met people who are suffering greatly. So you feel very sad, tears, feel sad for them. But you have to keep your mind calm so that you can think how to help. Stay calm. If you get overwhelmed, you can't help yourself, can't help them. Try to stay calm. Upekkha.
做讲的话，他曼谷的话有楼跌下来了缅甸的话也是有很多楼跌下来的话，有的缅甸的工人在曼谷做工的话，他的家庭的人也是屋子跌下来的话也是死了不多了很多了那怎么看到的话，就是讲觉得心里可能觉得很痛苦这样子的，OK？ 可是痛苦是痛苦，可是你要保持一个冷静的心态，去给自己看有什么能力的话可以帮的话就去帮不可以帮的话就是这样子冷静都不可以帮的话，就是你现在没有能力帮的话，你就改天要等到有能力帮的时候你才去帮懂吗？帮的方法也是很多了，现在也是有 YouTube 的话，也是有很多人去凑钱去什么的话，去给他们你是有 有多余的钱的话，要叫补多也是可以去叫补多的，懂吗？啊，不高兴是不高兴啊，可是还是要活下去的嘛，你自己还是要活下去的嘛。因为有这个事情的话，太不高兴的话，太痛苦，懂吗？要自己照顾你，要自己照顾你自己，你才可以帮人家来，对不对？懂吗
？OK 啦。很好，很好。
还有那种
You have big heart, I understand. Big heart. So big heart have to be careful. Big heart, big suffering. Question.
In Malaysia, we are not subject to earthquakes, but when we go on holidays to places like Myanmar and Thailand, and when we are there, earthquakes may happen, our hotels may collapse, we may be stuck in the rubble for a couple of days with no possibility of rescue. So what meditation technique should we use to face death at that time?
The same that you always do. So if you're used to recollecting Buddha, recollect the Buddha. If you're used to watching the breath, watch the breath. If you're used to contemplating the 4 elements in your body, for example, do that. Whatever your normal meditation is, it's always applicable, always useful. Some people find it hard to meditate, so they do chanting. When there's panic, fear, Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vichacharana sampanno. It can do, it will work. It keeps your mind calm, steady in all these difficult situations. Really, we don't need to wait for an earthquake or some big problem. Just daily life. Sometimes there are things that make us nervous. Maybe you have to go for surgery, or some people they're too afraid to go to the dentist. Look at the teeth. Iti piso bhagava. Really? Or the other day, I was at the monastery, a snake went into the shed, and the monks were there getting tools out of the shed. Snake goes in, and all the snakes in our monastery are very poisonous. They can kill you. Luckily, they're not aggressive, but they can kill you if they bite you. The snake goes in, the monk is like, uh-oh, iti piso bhagava. No, sorry, he didn't chant that. He chanted, Virupake hime metang eravake hime. Chanting, he did chanting. Because the snake is there, he better chant. And he chanted, and it helped him, and then the snake disappeared. Good outcome, good story, good end to the story. Chanting will help. Meditation will help. Learning to bring your mind to the Dhamma in some way when it's faced with some strong emotion, fear, anxiety, worry. So many people I've talked to have used chanting or meditation to face their fears and got good results in all kinds of ordinary situations. Job interview, doctor, dentist, wild animals. One lady, Cambodian lady, lives in Melbourne. She wanted to go home. She couldn't go home for 10 years to Cambodia to visit family because she's afraid of flying. Didn't want to fly because she's scared. She's talking to me. I said, oh, maybe meditation can help you just enough to get on the plane, take off, get there. Maybe one trip, maybe it can help you. Try meditating, learn the chant. I asked her, can you do the chanting? She said she can. So you have to learn to chant mindfully, just concentrate on the words, iti piso bhagava arahang samma. Don't look out the window, don't look at anybody. Iti piso bhagava, just think of Buddha. Recite these words over and over again. At the very least until you're in the air, and then you have to sit there, no choice, once you're up. Her problem is getting on the plane. She couldn't get on the plane, so I said, you just chant the words, walk up, get on the plane, sit there, close your eyes, keep chanting. And she did. She managed to fly home. So many people in so many different situations, they've used chanting or meditation to help them face danger. And it really works. Any other questions?
Well, you said you didn't plan to teach. Did you have to overcome any nervousness or anxiety first?
Yeah, not strong anxiety, but nervousness, uncertainty. How do you teach Dhamma? I don't know. I wasn't trained as a teacher. I was trained as a meditator, as a monk, the rules of the monk, practices, the meditation. That's what I was trained in. So when you start talking, it's like, what do I say? So you go, maybe you have mental blank sometimes. Or you say something and everyone's just sitting there blank and I wonder if they understood what I said. So you go very slowly. But Ajahn Chah's guideline is quite good. He just said, just talk about what you know, what you understand. Because one thing, if you're teaching Buddhism, Buddhism goes from very basic up to very high, many levels, all in one. So sometimes you feel inadequate. Oh, I don't know about Nibbana. What if they ask me about Nibbana? I can't talk about Nibbana. But you don't have to talk about what you don't know. You talk about what you know. What can you talk about? I can talk about chanting. I can talk about sitting, watching my breath go in and out. I can talk about dealing with painful legs, because I used to have lots of painful legs. I can talk about feeling hungry, feeling too hot. I can talk about missing home. I can talk about what happens when you miss your girlfriend. All these things that I've experienced, I can talk about, because I know them. So gradually I would talk about what I know and try and talk in a way that was explaining Buddhist principles, Buddhist teachings. So sometimes I talk about myself, sometimes I talk about the people I meet, the situations I'm in, because everything is Dhamma, everything is teaching you if you're open to it. And so very quickly, if you're a teacher, like I'm the teacher, I'm the senior monk in my monastery from day one, very quickly I start to meet people, hear their problems, encounter difficulties or problems myself in building the monastery. Very quickly I have a whole store of experiences. I can say, oh, this happened and we did this. So for example, when we'd been there about 4 months, we put in a planning application to build a monastery on the land that was offered. And they never had this kind of application there before. And the first thing the planning officers of the government said was, you can't do it, it won't work, no. And we're like, what? They've offered this land, we're going to build a monastery for the lay people who have mortgaged their house to buy this land. And it's a big sacrifice. I said, you can't say no, there must be a way. And I said, well, there may be a way, but it'll be very difficult and you've got to change Australian law to do it. I was like, what? I didn't fly over from Thailand to change Australian law, but in actual fact that's what we had to do, but it wasn't such a big thing as it sounds, but we did change Australian law. And we had to go through a process and explain what a monastery is and describe it and overcome many, many obstacles. But generally the people were not against us, they just were saying it's difficult and there were many rules and regulations. So we had to negotiate all of that. So we just kept going and people said, when's the monastery going to be approved? When will you start building? I said, I don't know. Just keep going. And you just keep going, hope for the best. And then just as they approved it, so everyone, oh, they've approved it. We finally got it after quite a few months. Then one neighbor said, I don't agree. There shouldn't be a monastery here. I object. He's like, what? They've approved it already, and then he objected afterwards. He's like, oh, gone through all this effort to get an approval to build a monastery, and then one neighbor said, no, I don't want a monastery next to my home. So then we had to go to court to satisfy this guy, because this guy didn't want the monastery, but everyone else did. So once he had objected, just one guy objected, all the local people we didn't really know, because we're brand new in the area, they all said, no, we want a monastery. Who's this guy objecting? We want a Buddhist monastery. We've got to have a Buddhist monastery. This is terrible. And they all started writing letters of support for the monastery. We didn't ask them to do that. They just did it off their own back. And one shopkeeper, local shopkeepers, told everyone, you've got to help the monks. They're going to stop the monastery. This guy doesn't want it. So they kept writing in. In the end, they got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters from local people surrounding the monastery, all saying, we want the monastery. In the end, the council said, this is the most popular application in the history of that area, ever. And they actually rang me up one day and they said, can you tell your supporters to stop writing letters? Because legally they have to answer every letter. And when you're getting hundreds of letters, they say, we employ one person full-time just to answer your support letters. So they're trying to blame me. I said, it's not my fault. I didn't ask anyone to do this. It's spontaneous. They want to help the monastery. They say they understand, but please stop. So we were very popular. Still, we had to go to court and the tribunal, and there's lawyers that stand up and they say there shouldn't be a monastery or there should be a monastery, and we sit there. And in the end, even the court said, yeah, there can be a monastery. So we got it twice. We got it approved by the local authority and by the court. So that gave me lots of food for Dhamma, for talking about. And people said, what did you do with this guy? Because he was really rude and aggressive and abusive. I said, well, we did what the Buddha taught. We practiced patience, loving kindness, forgiveness, right speech. Because he would ring up and practice wrong speech. I'll be sitting there listening to him and go, oh, there's a lot of wrong speech coming down the phone today. Well, I better practice my right speech, not to argue, not to fight. One day he drove his car to the monastery, and in those days the monastery was a farm. You know, the land was a farm, there was forest, and then there was 100 cows, and there was grapevines. We bought a vineyard, and the road was just mud. It was just a muddy track, much worse than this. Little muddy track, and so this guy drove in to shout at us because he's unhappy about monks being there. But his car got stuck in the mud. So he was shouting at us and his car was getting stuck in the mud. And there's 2 or 3 monks were standing there and we're going, I guess this guy, we're going to have to push him out of the mud. This guy who's come here to abuse us, we've still got to help him. Oh. But we have to, we're monks. So we walked over, luckily just as we walked over to push him out of the mud, and we were covered in mud, he managed to free his car and drive off, shouting at us. So we had to practice forgiveness, patience, kindness, right speech. All the factors of the path got tested, right mindfulness, right effort, right view, right samadhi. Because people were watching us. If we got angry with this guy, they'd all go, man, no samadhi. We'd all lose face. Because people tend to be a little bit like kids in the school playground. And they're watching the monk, and they're like, oh, the monk got angry, oh. They do. So you have to be very calm, composed, controlled. But when we did that, he was angry, we practiced patience, loving kindness. People became inspired. They said, oh, this is the right way. So they wrote even more letters of support. So You just put your Dhamma into practice and then you start to get things that you can teach other people. Because Dhamma teaching isn't just words, is it? It's how you live, what you do, how you breathe, how you think, the way you live. It's the whole lot. And I've never been one, couldn't just quote from the suttas but not practice myself. You have to practice what you talk about. So I've always talked about what I know, what I practice for myself. So far I've been okay. And obviously I know many monks and they often share their experiences, lay people share their experiences. So like I was telling you about the lady who was walking through the earthquake in Bangkok, reciting Buddha, walking along the road, unshaken, calm. She did exactly the right thing. And she said, now I know why you've been teaching walking meditation like this all these years. It worked. So it's like, oh, it works. If you do the teaching, it works. So you have to practice it as well. Then what you say has some meaning. That's my feeling.
This question may be a little bit abstract untuk kita semua pada and the traveling of dependent origination. So I've quite difficult to understand the first three. How does ignorance cause mental formation? And how does mental formation causes consciousness?
Where do your mental formations come from, do you think? All these thoughts, all these moods you have every day, all day, where do they come from?
Could be memories, triggered by memories.
Could be. But the whole point is, it's hard to answer that question because they all come from ignorance. Ignorance means unawareness, not knowing. And that's very difficult to describe. It's hard to put your finger on and say, well, that's the cause. The Buddha has helped us. He's given us the cause. He's given us the starting point, ignorance. But for us ourselves to talk about ignorance is hard because we can't catch it. That's why we still suffer. That's why we still have all these mental formations coming up. We make karma, sometimes good karma, good, but sometimes bad karma. We keep making karma till the end of our life and then we come back and do it all over again. It's because of ignorance. And that's the problem. Ignorance means not knowing. So it's not just unmindful, it's also wrong views and wrong understanding, and we just miss so much. We're not very aware.
There's no self. Then how come the ignorance arises? Because
Yeah, well, ignorance comes because we mistakenly believe there is a self. And we keep attaching to every thought. That's me, I am this thought. You know, I'm thinking this very wonderful thought or this very horrible thought. Doesn't matter. We're always saying this is me. And this body is me and my feelings, my memories are me. That's all ignorance. And where does ignorance come from? It comes from attachment. That's the whole point of dependent origination. Craving is the cause for attachment or clinging. Clinging is the cause for becoming. Becoming is the cause for more birth. And with more birth, more ignorance. So every time you have a moment where you lose your mindfulness, say you're meditating, and you're trying very hard to be mindful, but you'll notice there are moments when you lose your mindfulness, aren't there? When you lose your mindfulness, your mind goes into a state of not knowing. You're lost in some mood, some thought, maybe you're falling asleep, you're daydreaming. At that moment, you're now feeding ignorance. Ignorance is increasing in amount in the world. Every time you lose your mindfulness, your ignorance is going up, and that's making ignorance come up more in the future, because one moment of ignorance will be a cause for another moment and another moment. Eventually it leads to rebirth. So it's not like a fixed thing, like where does all this ignorance come from? It comes from our lack of awareness. Ignorance breeds ignorance. It leads on to more ignorance. So it's round and round and round going on, whether we realize it or not. But we're lucky the Buddha understood it, so he explained it for us very well. It's quite hard work, you know. Everyone finds dependent origination quite hard work to understand, even just to remember it. It's fast as well. Like these factors of the stages of dependent origination are explaining how suffering arises. It can be in one moment suffering arises. Ajahn Chah used the beautiful simile. He said it's like someone goes up the top of the apple tree to collect apples, but then they slip and they fall down. They don't have enough time to count how many branches they pass, because they're just falling very fast. All they know is they've landed with a thud and it hurts. Dependent origination is like that. On paper or in a talk, we can explain it, put it out there, or ignorance, mental formations, consciousness, nama rupa, go through all the stages, but that's on paper. When it happens in daily life, it's so fast, it's just like falling out of a tree. You can't count all the stages, suddenly you're hurting. Everyone says, when I get angry, where does it come from? Why am I suddenly angry, boiling over with anger? They missed it. They didn't see it coming. When I have greed, they didn't see it coming. Lust, fear, didn't see it coming. Why is everyone so afraid when the earthquake comes? It's instant, isn't it? As soon as the building shakes, your heart shakes too. Oh, suddenly you panic. It's instant. That's the paticca samuppada at work. It's because you've got ignorance, conditioning mental formations, you're afraid. An arahant wouldn't do that. If an arahant was in the earthquake, they're still in the earthquake, they're still in danger, but there wouldn't be the fear. Because they've already, you might say, conquered or had victory over the dependent origination. They're not creating suffering anymore. Their mental formations are not creating suffering anymore. But that's because they have no more ignorance. For us, we still have ignorance and we keep making more. We keep feeding the whole process. So say you get angry once, if you don't practice mindfulness, you're not aware, your anger is going to come up more and more often, isn't it? And unfortunately it's like that. Some people get more and more angry over time because they're not seeing what's going on, or more and more greedy, or more and more afraid, or more worried. It happens, and it often accumulates more and more and more. That's going in the way of suffering. But if you practice the path, you're unraveling that whole process. So you're reducing the suffering, you're reducing the clinging, the craving, you're establishing mindfulness, insight. There's a chance to undo the whole process. That's why Nibbana is possible.
I just received a message from one of the participants yesterday, the one-day retreat.
Oh yeah?
He said he attended with his son, and he would like to ask for help to share the merit for his friend who is in ICU now. His name is Tan Thi Hao.
Tan Thi Hao. Tan Thi Hao.
Tan Thi Hao.
Thi Hao. Yeah.
So he's in the ICU now.
Do you know what the cause of his problem is?
India, Asia, Hospital Talinjaya.
Do you know what the cause of the problem is?
He didn't mention. I don't know, he will just send me because
Yeah, maybe just say yes, we'll happily spread metta to him. But can they give us just a description, brief description of what his problem is?
Okay.
What put him into ICU? Heart attack, stroke, whatever.
So a question is how, like most of us, we've gone through life tribulations and somehow the heart kind of hardens and becomes your advice, just flash on how we can soften the heart so that we can receive the Dhamma?
Well, practice the Dhamma. Listen to the Dhamma regularly, and a regular meditation practice would be best of all. Because meditation does bring you patient endurance, but it also brings you a softness. Your heart becomes very sensitive to your own suffering and its causes, but also to what the solutions are, the way to let go of the causes of suffering. And then you're also sensitive to other people. So if you're meditating following the Buddhist path, even though you may encounter many hardships that kind of toughen you up on the one hand, it doesn't make you go into negativity or depression or being cold. So these Brahma Viharas again are designed to prevent that happening. Like equanimity, the danger of equanimity is being too cold and indifferent, not caring. And that can happen. The danger with metta is you fall in love with people. You get too close to them, too attached, fall in love, can't think straight, can't act properly because you're too attached, too in love. Karuna, often the danger is you become disappointed because you're seeing all this suffering, you want them to be free from suffering, or you want yourself to be free from suffering, but it's not happening fast enough or not happening yet. When's it going to happen? And you become very disappointed, burnt out maybe, just give so much care, but then give to the point where you've got nothing left. Mudita, the sort of danger I think is, well, the obvious danger, or the opposite of mudita is jealousy. So, we have to counter jealousy with mudita. We often are very competitive now in our society because the corporate world, getting jobs, education, society, it's all about who's got more, who's got less, got to get ahead. Sometimes getting ahead means climbing on other people. So we practice mudita to counter that. We try to be sensitive to other people's successes. May they be happy, may they keep their success, to counter our own tendency towards jealousy. So these four qualities work together. So metta softens your upekkha so you don't become too cold or indifferent. But upekkha helps your metta because maybe you have kindness for someone but they're suffering and there's nothing you can do. So upekkha is needed just to balance the metta. You see what I mean there? If you cultivate all four qualities regularly, you think about them, maybe you develop them in meditations, that helps to balance your mind so you don't go too one way or another. You get too cold and indifferent, too clingy and attached, too many high expectations. It helps you to deal with the world and its problems in a balanced way. And that's your own personal problems and other people's problems. Any more question? Yep.
Thinking about the one person is actually practicing in the path to rest, towards Nirvana. Is it better to be born a human or a deva? Because if I understand correctly, devas don't get to do so much dana. I understand that they can really practice the way we do. We become holistic. I don't know whether devas is up there.
The devas come when we invite them. So we invite the devas to come when we do chanting, and when we spread metta, we invite the devas to come and give their anumodana. I think you're asking the wrong question really. It's not whether you should be a human or a deva, it's you should commit to the practice. That's the important thing. Commit to cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path for the end of suffering. There are devas who are committed to that, And there's humans who are committed to that. There's humans who are not committed to that, and there's devas who are not committed to that. That's the number one thing, developing what we call right view. What is the purpose of life? It's to cultivate this path, to free the mind from greed, anger and delusion, and use our time, our intelligence, our effort for that goal. If by the end of your life you've created the causes to be reborn as a deva, so be it. But as long as you've got right view, doesn't matter. Devas can also practice the Dhamma in their way. But if you don't have right view when you die, oops, where will you end up? You don't know, because you haven't got right view. Your mind could go down to a lower realm. You could kind of get lost in samsara. Who knows when you'll come back to the Buddha, because you don't have right view. That's the important thing, is establish right view. Listen to the Dhamma, respect the Dhamma, and then try to put it into practice through your life the best you can. As far as being a deva, a human, just let nature take care of that. Don't worry too much about that. It's not the important question.
You said he had a stomach cramp and sent to the hospital, and then his morning collapsed and heartbeat stopped, and sent to this was given CPR and sent to ICU. Right now coma on life support.
Would you call that a heart attack?
Stomach cramp and then sent to hospital. Suddenly collapsed and heart stopped.
Do we know how old is he?
I think 35 years old. Was born 1990.
Oh, very young.
35 years old.
Tan Thi Hao. So we will dedicate merits tonight. Maybe before we finish we'll do some merit sharing, and we can all think of Tan Thi Hao. Wish him to be free from his illness and recover and come back to consciousness. If it can be done, may it happen, and may the devas also help, because the devas like to help when they can. So any more questions before we finish? Yeah. Can, yeah.
Teaching the Dhamma. Because I have been a Dhamma school teacher, teaching kids for about more than 10 years. I started with, my knowledge is very little, but yet I still teach, and I keep on teaching, but my knowledge is actually very minimal, I would say. So when I reflected on all the Acharyas who are teaching the Dhamma, which they already practice and become a monk and they come and teach, and versus me, I'm a lay person who doesn't know anything much, but I just read books and refer. I'm just treating the Dhamma teaching that I'm teaching the children just like school, but like a teacher. You just read, you understand, and then you go and teach. Call Brahma Vihara, blah 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 blah. But in actual, I don't even know what is metta or karuna. In my practice, you understand what I'm saying? So, am I doing this wrongly? And then how can I? As I go now, I'm learning. Now only I see, I look like, probably I'm not done well, but is it like karma for me? I started that way.
Well, first thing is you look at your intention. Your intention is to help. So that's a good intention. Secondly, if you ask yourself now, having taught for 10 years or so, would you say you know more about the Dhamma now than you did when you started? Then everything is fine. You're going in the right direction. If you answered me that you know less and you're more confused, then that would be a worrisome answer. But I think you know more now, don't you? You understand more.
I felt that by teaching, actually I'm teaching myself.
Well, that's it. It's one way we learn. It's through teaching others, and especially kids. Your kids are not expecting a lot from you. They're not expecting a PhD
level.
level explanation of the Paticca Samuppada. We all struggle with that. They're expecting a simple explanation of the Dhamma. And They probably need basic teachings on good and bad karma, how to be kind, how to practice generosity, how to reflect on their moods, maybe to deal when they're feeling very upset or stressed, all the kind of simple stuff. You've probably talked about that many times, the life of the Buddha, what the Buddha did, some of the basic things and stories you've taught. That's already useful stuff. And the more you teach it, the more it goes in, the more you think about it, the more it will mean something to you, and then you can probably teach it better. So many people learn through teaching. You probably can't get to Nibbana through teaching alone, but you can certainly understand Dhamma that then you take and practice yourself. So it should help your practice as you do this. But just remember, as you're teaching them, you're teaching yourself. Never forget that, because one of the dangers of being a teacher is you get to the point where you think you know, whereas you're maybe quoting the Buddha or quoting someone else, or talking about the theory, the philosophy, but haven't actually practiced it. That's a problem or a danger. So always remind yourself, as you teach others, you also have to teach yourself. So you have to be humble and honest. So as a monk, we're not allowed to make false claims. It's one of the 4 things a monk can never do. You can never kill, you can never steal, you can never have an act of sexual intercourse, and we can never make a false claim that we are an arahant or we have some attainment that we don't have. So as a teacher you understand that, oh yeah, I have to accept I don't know everything about what Buddhism, what the Buddha taught. I only know a certain level. So you maintain that humility and that awareness that there's some things you know and some things you don't know. As long as you do that, you're fine. You're going in the right direction and you keep learning. Not really, because you didn't have any intention to hurt or harm anyone or trick anyone, delude anyone, so I wouldn't worry about that. But just keep your intention to keep learning. As long as you're learning, you can teach others, because you're teaching them what you learn and you can be honest and you think, this is what I've learned. I don't know everything, but I've known this much. And that's being honest.
We shouldn't call ourselves teachers.
Huh?
We shouldn't call ourselves teachers.
You can. That's a reasonable label for the role you do. You're not calling yourself arahant. You're not calling yourself the best teacher in the world. You're just calling yourself a teacher. And there's many teachers in the world, so that's a reasonable title. It's okay. Just be humble, so that if they ever say, do you really know what you're talking about? You say, well, I know some things, yeah, maybe some things I'm still learning. So you're honest, nobody's under any misunderstanding. My very first Dhamma talk as a monk, I had been a monk 5 years. I was staying with Ajahn Buddhadasa, who I think Bhikkhu Hai, Bhante Hai also used to visit. Ajahn Buddhadasa lived in southern Thailand, very good teacher, considered to be an arahant. And he liked to get other monks to teach, similar to Ajahn Chah in that way. I was staying in his monastery right at the back, out of the way, nobody knows I'm there, just hiding away, doing my meditation, because I was only a young monk. I'd never given any public talks before. And one day in the afternoon, I was just sitting there meditating, happy in the forest. There's a knock on the door. I opened the door of my kuti, and this man there, Thai man, says, Ajahn, it's time for your talk. I said, what? Nobody told me about a talk? What do you mean, time for my talk? And he said, no, they've arranged for you to give this afternoon's Dhamma talk. There's a whole group of meditators here on retreat and you're giving today's talk. I said, how many? 500. So the hall was like twice as big as this. 500 people. And they wheeled me out, a little nervous Western monk. And the talk is in Thai. I've been a monk 5 years. Come out. 500 people. So they did the request like you for a talk. I did my Namo Tassa. I closed my eyes and I just went for it. Huh? In Thai language. I talked for about, I don't know, 45 minutes they just said, tell us how you practice. So I said, okay, this is how I practice. I told them, and then I did the end of the talk, I bowed, I went back to my hut, and I thought, oh, I'm glad that's over. The next morning, the monk who had arranged all this without telling me, he then came around and said hello, and he said, oh, by the way, your talk yesterday, they really liked it. We're going to make it into a Dhamma book and print 5,000 copies. I said, what? 5,000 copies? Me? I'm not a teacher. No, you don't have to do it. But he said, it's too late. It was already getting someone to do the transcript. It's already happening. Nothing you can do. It's like, So about 6 months later, I was back at Wat Nana Chat. And that same monk turned up and he had a big box of this talk in a book form, and they had done exactly what he said. They printed it and distributed. Even in Australia, when I arrived in Australia, which is like, I don't know, 25 years later, I'd been in Melbourne a year or two, and one lady came up to me and said, oh, you're the one who gave this talk in this book I've had. I was like, oh, there's nothing to do with me. They did. So, but after that I went quiet. I gave this one talk to 500 people that became a book, and then I disappeared. I didn't give any more public talks, and I was very careful and very secretive, and for many, many years until almost until the time I left Thailand, I hardly get any talks and just kept very quiet. So things happen in funny ways sometimes. Anyway, maybe that's enough for tonight. I'm sure you're all a bit achy in the legs. So we'll end the session there. Maybe we'll just lead you in sharing merit, and we can share some of this merit with Tanti Hao. Okay, we'll face the Buddha.